Hola, Samuel here. Lori Gerson guest starred in our most recent episode, María Pita, Swamp Breath. She's a writer, translator and interpreter, actress and model who has been living in Spain for the past 24 years. She's also a very dear friend of mine. With so many listeners asking what it's like to live abroad, I wanted to give you this bonus episode where we chat about her journey. We'll be discussing cultural differences, like personal space does not mean the same thing in Spain, finding your voice in a different language, and what that means if you curse, how to mingle with the locals, and some creepy Spanish traditions. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio. So without any further ado, I would say we can just jump right into it.
Okay.
I have a question that I have been wanting to ask you, which is, what originally brought you to Spain?
That's a good question because, first of all, my original plan, I was living in New York, and I had learned Spanish when I was young. I grew up in southern Arizona in Tucson. And when I lived in New York, my roommate was a Spanish man from Asturias, from the north. And I started studying Spanish again. And I had an opportunity to rent an apartment in Barcelona between one thing and another. I ended up moving to Madrid. And I thought, I'll go for a year, maybe 2 years, learn the language. And well, it's now been 24 years.
I was just going to ask how long ago that was. Yeah.
So, yeah, the time's kind of gotten away from me. But I think when you make a choice to move to a different country, that's a really big decision to live in another language, another culture. And honestly, and you know this, I'm sure as well, the first year is really the hardest year. It's when you don't really dominate the language. You have to find a place to live. You have to make friends. And I think if you get through the first year and things are going reasonably well, why leave? No? And also, I'd come to Madrid from New York City, which is a wonderful, fabulous city, but very demanding, very expensive. And especially at the time, Madrid for me was like living in a pueblo. Was, very much more relaxed, much, much, much cheaper. And there was really kind of no reason to leave. And then one thing leads to another, and 24 years have gone by.
So there was really no reason for you to leave, but was there anything in particular that made you want to stay?
I think the quality of life is so high here. And we all complain now because it is really true. There's a housing crisis. Apartments have become much more expensive. Just life in general has become more expensive, I think, across the board. But even with that, there's something about the life here. I love that people are in the streets all the time, in the terraces, in the bars, in the restaurants. They have something here that I've grown to really love, which is the, what do we call it when after lunch, when you sit and you chat?
La sobremesa.
La sobremesa, which, is just marvelous that if you go to lunch with people at 2:00, a pretty normal Spanish time to go to lunch, on the weekends we're talking about, you might not get home until midnight.
Yeah. We don't even have a word for that in English, sobremesa.
That says a lot about the differences in the culture, no?
What do you think that says?
That we eat and run, basically. We're not going to sit there and hang at the table and talk. Just look at a Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, how even after all that preparation, how long do people really sit there at the table, So the whole, I don't know, for me it was all, I moved around a lot when I was a kid. My dad was military. But when I got to Spain, I don't know, it felt like home pretty quickly.
So when did you have that moment when you thought, okay, Spain is my home now? Did that happen immediately, or did it happen with time after you'd been living here for a while?
I think it probably crept up on me a little bit because I really did have this idea that, I would stay for a couple of years. I would perfect my Spanish. At the time, I was working with ESPN. As a friend told me once, he said, you were probably one of the first original digital nomads because in 2001, I came here with my computer and, was a very privileged person to be working with ESPN. I was a freelancer, but to be able to live in Spain and keep working with them and, that gave me a really nice lifestyle here at that time. And I don't know, what happened was also I fell in with a group of really great friends, and they were always making plans for trips and, the Puente de Mayo, let's go to Ireland. Okay. And I always had some sort of plan for 6 months in the future. So how do you move?
Yeah. You're stuck. Even if you wanted to leave, you can't.
You can't. You have plans, and they're good plans. That's what you want to do. So one thing led to another, and before I knew it, it just really
24 years it got by.
24 years. Also, I think I did grow up as a military brat. So I think when you're a military brat, you kind of belong everywhere and nowhere. And so once I got used to being here, when I would take trips back to the States, and I went back usually once or twice a year, there was something strange about it. Felt strange, I wasn't totally at home there. I am Spanish, but I'm Spanish entre comillas, in quotes, because, I was born and raised in the States. I lived there for many, many years. So I come back here. Maybe I'm not 100% rooted here either, but I'm not there anymore.
You'd mentioned about your groups of friends, or your group of friends here, rather. And I'm wondering if you have any ideas between the United States and in Spain in social terms, if it changes the way your social interactions happen or how you're meeting people.
They absolutely do. They're totally different. They're really totally different, because when I first moved here, I don't know if you had this experience, you really have to get used to the fact that Spaniards are going to be very involved in your life. Your friends are going to be very, very involved in your life. And, I think in the States, especially, I was living in New York. Before that, I was in LA and in San Francisco. If somebody calls up and says, would you like to go do something on Friday night? And you can say, no, I can't. I'm busy. And the conversation can just end right there.
That's it.
Well, here, no, as you well know. It's like, no, I can't, because I talked to Maria Jose and she invited me to go to this other concert, but we're not sure if we're going to go, but maybe we're going to. You have to give this big, long explanation of why, you just can't say no. And the personal space is totally different.
Yeah.
Really had to get used to that.
Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Oh, yeah. When you first get here, you feel like everybody is on top of you. Like even standing in line at the grocery store to check out, the person behind you, you can feel their breath on your neck, right? And you're thinking, why is this person on top of me?
Yeah.
But it's just they have a very different perception of what is personal space. I think Americans, we have a very pronounced personal space. It's more or less an arm's length.
Yeah. The personal bubble.
Yeah, the personal bubble. And you expect people to respect that bubble. Well, here, at first, it feels like a whole country of close talkers.
Yeah.
It's just talking close in your face,
Yeah.
Now, of course, I love it, and I do the same thing, and I'm very used to it. But, it took a little bit of time to get used to that.
It's a bit of a mentality shift, I would say, too.
Completely.
Yeah. Well, actually, I also wanted to ask you, because you've worked in a lot of different fields. I know you've worked in translation, interpretation. You also mentioned that you've been working for ESPN, writing. You're also a model and an actress. So working in all of these different fields, you wear lots of different kinds of hats. How have they fed into each other, if they have at all?
Yeah. I think I'm a firm believer that if we're talking about work experiences, because we can all have bad experiences in life, but talking about your work life, there really is no bad experience. Even the worst job that you get, you're going to learn something from that job that you will take into the next situation you have. Even if it's just what you learn is that you hate that kind of work or certain people. I had a job in New York before I moved here. This was so long ago that it was one of the first websites. It was for the election in 1996 that Bill Clinton won, if my memory serves me. And this was with CBS News. And so I was very excited, but it was a limited gig to be putting information in. And then one day, the boss, who was a woman who had actually brought me on the project, she said, okay, well, today, now you're a news writer. And I hadn't really ever written any news, but I have a big enough ego that, I mean, I wouldn't perform surgery, but if somebody says do X, I'm sort of like, yeah, I'll get in there. I'll do it for a little bit. I'll figure it out. So I started.
Just not marking an X on someone's chest, right? With a scalpel?
No, that I'm not going to do. I'm fairly serious about not trying that because I don't like blood. But, so like I started writing these news articles, and this woman turned out to just be a really bad person, like a really, really bad, kind of psychotic, toxic person. And being the person that I am, I kept trying to make it work and trying to, change the situation. And I ended up, when I did finally leave, thankfully, I mean, the job was up. It was supposed to be a few weeks. I think it lasted 3 or 4 months. I realized, what I really realized from that situation is that you don't have to work with people like that. You don't. Yeah. I mean, you can find nice people to work with. If your stomach hurts every morning when you go into work, there's a problem. If you cry at work, that's a really big problem. You don't have to have jobs like that. And so for me, also, I learned how to write news stories. Yeah. So, and that helped me when I started working for ESPN and it was a bad experience that in the end turned out to be a good one. I've had jobs that through doing that particular job, I got a different job only because the example is I worked on a radio station when I lived in northern New Hampshire. WMWV, WBNC, Voice of the Mountain. It was really a fabulous experience. We did a show called Sports Talk. Curiously, I ended up working at ESPN. So that type of thing, who would have ever thought, fed into the next things that, happened in my life. So I'm a big believer in just trying whatever it is that interests you. I'm a little bit of a dilettante, so I dip my fingers into all sorts of different things. I'm not saying that's good. I think I'd be a lot richer monetarily if I'd had a different type of career. But, I'm pretty happy with how things went.
Well, and it's hard when there's so many interesting things out there in the world, too.
Aren't there, though?
Yeah. So with this previous experience that you had working with ESPN and as a writer, and then as we mentioned before, you've also been working as a translator, how did the acting and modeling come about?
That's been like a crazy thing that started really a year ago. A year ago? Yeah, something like that. A little more than a year ago. Through a friend of mine, a mutual friend from translation and interpreting work, who had started working with an agency. And she said, they're always looking for all sorts of kinds of people. Talking about doing advertising, right? And so I went in and I met with the agency and they gave me a contract for 2 years, which kind of stunned me. I have to say, last year when I first started, the last part of the year was super busy. It was really good. This year I've been a finalist. They call you an opción. But that means I have no idea if that means it's between you and one other person, you and 3 other people. I have no idea. But I've been that 4 different times. They didn't end up picking me. So I feel like my career in that particular sense isn't rolling that well. But you know what? I have an age where I said to a friend the other day, joking, of course, I just have to hang in there and my competition's going to die off. And I'll start getting more gigs.
Well, from what you're telling me, I mean, this sounds like something I think recently a lot of Americans, for multiple different reasons, because of the political situation in the States or just boredom or looking for something different, what have you, a lot of people are looking to move abroad. And you did do this, and I'm sure that for some people, when they hear about the career that you've had, that you still have the things that you're doing, like, wow, that sounds like the dream. But I'm sure that there are also misconceptions. So is there one that occurs to you? Like, what do you think might be one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about moving abroad?
I think there's probably a few because, I am sure you also, I'm getting a good number of calls of people kind of desperate to escape. I think people underestimate, first of all, there are big cultural differences. You feel like they're less between the United States and Europe, for example, because, here in Madrid we have McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken. The U.S. exports a lot of its worst shit, and good stuff too. I think people don't take seriously enough, and probably I didn't either, the when in Rome. You really can't come over here and expect that everything is going to be like it was in the States, because in that case, you should just stay there because you are moving into a different culture, different place, and you really have to learn the language.
Yeah.
And you always can. I'm a firm believer. I don't care how old you are. You start studying, you can learn another language. Will you be perfect at it? Probably not. Will you have a lot of accent? I still have a lot of accent in Spanish. I've been here for 24 years. I consider myself fluent. But if you're not willing to learn the language, you'll end up kind of in a ghetto of only being with other expats. And I don't think that's the same experience. I think if you want to really have the experience of living abroad, living in another country, the minimum is that you have to make an effort with the language so you can have local friends. And then that helps you. It's the opposite of a vicious circle, a positive circle, whatever we call those, where
a virtuous cycle, maybe?
A virtuous cycle, exactly, where you start making local friends. So then, our case, for example, then you're speaking Spanish more because you have friends that you're going out with. And so you get better, and then you get more confident, and then you speak even better. But if you don't make an effort to learn the language, I think it's going to be problematic. You want to have local friends. You just want to. I don't, because there are people that come to Madrid, I think maybe people different than we are, who came here with IBM or whatever, with a really big company. And there's, colonias americanas on the outskirts of the city where these kind of people go and they send their kids to the American school. And so, are they really having a cultural immersion in Spain? I don't know. I mean, they're getting something. You would absorb something, but I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it. I think you got to really dive in, splash around.
Yeah, because you speak Spanish, but you also you started studying Italian.
Yeah, I love Italian.
How old were you when you started studying Italian?
Like what? In my early 50s, I guess?
That's living proof that it's never too late.
No, it isn't. I get by. I can defend myself, more or less. I understand. I always say, parlo male, ma capisco bene. Because I really understand well, but I don't speak all that good, and I certainly don't have a good accent. But it's so and
you have fun with it. You
have fun, and when you travel places, I mean, we study languages to be able to communicate with people when we travel.
Another thing that I think kind of binds you and I together, as far as interests are concerned, is the power of storytelling. And so I wanted to ask you, with your work as a translator, writer, actor. What have you learned about the power of voice and storytelling?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I think one of the most important things is that everyone has a story. Everybody has a story. Everybody has multiple stories. And the best way to connect with other people is through those stories. As a teacher, I'm an English teacher, and I've worked as a coach also and with very high-level executives. I think the best way you can connect with them is through their stories and then what you can bring to the table to help them develop those kinds of stories, I think it's everything. I mean, I'm a huge cinema fan and series and theater and, everything we're doing is living out our stories one way or another.
Yeah, that reaches humans with the background that I have in politics. I've realized that you can shout statistics all you want at someone's face, but you're never going to reach them the same way as with a human story.
No.
I think that's what moves us the most.
Yeah, there's this film right now that I recommend to people, but it's a hard film to watch, called The Voice of Hind. And it's, I'm sure you've read about it, this young girl in Gaza who... it follows it's not the White Cross, is it? Now I can't remember. The group that's trying to help save her, right? And so we read all these stories about what's happening over there and the atrocities, and it's very upsetting. But it is just numbers, and you become very kind of cold to those numbers. But when you put a face and a name to what's happening, it becomes something totally different. This is the reason there's the Vietnam War Memorial with everyone's names, the memorial at Ground Zero in New York, because there's real people and real stories and real lives behind the statistics. And I think if you want to touch people, that's the direction you need to go.
Do you think that storytelling changes with your background between both Spain and the United States and both languages? Do you think that stories are told in a different way in the two languages, or is it more universal, or maybe both a little bit?
Yeah, I think, I had a really fabulous Spanish teacher in New York when I was studying at the Instituto Cervantes, Marta Berman. She's wonderful, and she's still a friend of mine. And she said to me one time, she said, you have to figure out who you are in Spanish because you're not the same person. And this is really true because you have different vocabulary. You express yourself in a different way. You even have hablando español, tengo la voz aquí. I have a higher voice in Spanish. And then when I speak English, my voice tends to drop. Yeah. You are a totally different person. So, and I think that's really interesting when you think about it.
Your brain is wired differently when you're speaking in a different language.
Completely. They do say it's really, really good to kind of hold off senility and all of that because you're working different parts of your brain. Yeah. Learning other languages is just such a rich experience. That's why I'm a little concerned, not a little, I'm probably very concerned about artificial intelligence and these little, earpieces you put in your ear. And it's true, if I was going to China and they could put a little earpiece in my ear and I could communicate with someone there, I think that would be really wonderful because I'm not going to learn Chinese. But those of us who speak multiple languages, the satisfaction of learning those languages and then traveling or being with people or being at a dinner party and being able to communicate in another language, it still stuns me when I go to a dinner party and all of a sudden I look around the table and everybody's speaking Spanish and I'm like, I understand them. Yeah. I form part of this group in this conversation, which I wouldn't if I hadn't made that effort. And it's a big effort. It is a big effort to learn the language.
And having that little headpiece, you would never be able to form a part of that group in the same way. There's something that would be missed there. I think it could be an interesting tool, but I just fear, I think I kind of agree with you. I'm afraid that people are just going to stop learning. And
I am too.
And that would be a real shame because learning other languages also helps you to understand people better.
Absolutely. We're outsourcing our brains in all sorts of ways. That concerns me, but I don't want to sound like the old lady who's like, oh, in my day, well, we did this and that. It's just, no, it's different. And I think technology is great. I couldn't have come here 24 years ago and kept my job in New York. Yeah. So I'm all for technology. Yeah. But I think we don't want to be its slave. Yeah. Like I read something, I don't remember who said it. I wish I did. It was in Spanish. It was in a column I was reading, but the woman said, I don't want AI to be, writing a novel or creating a picture or a photograph while I'm washing the dishes. I want AI to wash the dishes while I'm writing a novel or creating a work of art. Yeah. And that's kind of my stance on it as well.
Because that's what maintains beauty for us, too.
Completely.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly subscribe to that idea. Well, I guess bringing it back to a little bit more the Spanish Sundown side of things and talking about the legends that we like to discuss on this show. Have you ever felt like a place in Spain was haunted or where you could feel the story in a place? Because there's a lot of history here.
Oh, there's a real lot of history. That's a tough one for me because I feel like we're surrounded by a lot of voices. And a lot of voices that's also a lot of noise if you live in the center of Madrid, like I am fortunate enough to be able to do and like you did as well. So some of my favorite places are actually the parks. So I tend to search out those places where the voices are silenced. But I will say I lived for a while near the Royal Palace, Calle Juan de Herrera, and right nearby there's a little church, very little church called the Church of San Nicolás. And a good friend of mine who's plugged into these types of things says there's, energy centers in the world and now I don't remember all of the story, but anyway, one of those energy centers is actually beneath the Iglesia de San Nicolás.
Yeah.
And I did go to visit it, and, I kind of thought I felt something, but I'm very easily, what's the word I'm looking for? Convinced, swayed. I buy everything. So it's like,
it's kind of fun to be swayed.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel the energy. I feel the energy here. Yeah, it's different. If that's true or not, I don't really know. But that place is there. If anyone comes to Madrid, should check it out because also it's a very beautiful little church that most people don't know about.
Yeah. Well, you were mentioning all the voices all around. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because for people who haven't been to Spain or to Madrid, I know what you're talking about immediately. But some of our listeners might not quite know exactly what you're getting at with that. Can you explain a bit more in depth?
Yeah, I think for those of us who have been in Madrid for a while now, like I said, it used to always be for me my pueblo. It's like you'd come back to Madrid, especially compared to somewhere like New York, and life moves more slowly. And in the different neighborhoods in Madrid, you had your own little neighborhood where, you had your cafe that you could go to. They knew you, your kiosco where you bought a newspaper, which I still do because I'm a dinosaur. I like to read on paper, especially the newspaper. And we're losing some of that now because the city is just really, really full. And a lot of tourists, Not to put down tourists because I'm a tourist as well. I was just in Prague a few weeks ago. It was wonderful. And we all want to travel, but there's kind of some real massifying of tourism. We're probably a little more fortunate in Madrid because in Barcelona, for example, it's even worse because they have the sea. We don't have water. It's dry. Yeah. In fact, everybody, I'll tell you, this is a little secret, come to Madrid in August. Now, you're going to bake. It's really, really hot.
It's really hot.
But everybody leaves.
Yeah.
Madrid in August, that's one of my favorite months of the year because everybody leaves. The tourists really don't come because there's no water and it's really, really hot. I grew up in Tucson, so, if I have to deal with it, I can. And you can go to any terraza, get yourself a table to have a cafe. You can go to any restaurant. You can go anywhere you want, walk around the streets. And it's a really beautiful, beautiful, comfortable city. But, it's gentrifying like so many other places. And yeah, those voices, they just don't stop. It's a noisy city.
In fact, they say it's one of the noisiest cities in the whole world.
I believe it. I mean, I haven't been to, I don't know, Bombay or some of those places. Maybe it's worse there. I don't know. Because also we all speak, I say we, talking about Spaniards. Yeah. We all speak really loudly. Everyone speaks at the same time. It's, it's like kind of chaotic, but it's wonderful.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree with you. Because on Spanish Sundown, we talk about objects with voices that are trapped inside of them, and they tell their stories after sunset. So if you had to choose an object from your own life that told a story, what would that be?
This one is an easy one. I have a mug that I drink my coffee from every single morning. It was my father's. My father died a very, very long time ago. I was 19 years old when my father died. And it was the mug he had on his desk working at on the Air Force bases. And this was from when we lived on Okinawa. And so it said Okinawa and then it has a drawing of the island and Kadena, Naha, where the different bases, Air Force bases, or the different U.S. bases were. One was the Army, one is the Air Force. I think there was a Marine base also. And now, curiously, it said at the top, Okinawa. That word has disappeared. So basically, that word is now inside of my body because I've been drinking my morning coffee for so many years out of that Okinawa mug. And when I lived in New York, my roommate Bernardo, one morning, his girlfriend lived with us for a little while. His girlfriend, who's now his wife, lived with us for a little while. And when she first moved in, we had this big, beautiful loft, like something that now is unaffordable for everybody, but we had a really good deal back then. And I come walking out in the morning, and his wife, girlfriend at the time, was drinking out of that mug. I thought I'd fall on the floor, really, because it's like nobody can touch that mug. Because if anything happens and it breaks, I need to be the person who breaks it.
Yeah.
If somebody else breaks it, I would probably have to throw them out the window or something. So yeah, that's one of my very prized possessions. I used to have actually my mother's wedding band. Which is somewhere in Cozumel at the bottom of the sea because I lost it on a dive trip.
Okay.
And
I was going to say, sounds like there's a story there.
And I came up and it was gone. It wasn't on my hand anymore. So I have like some very few things, but you know, I moved around so much. When I came here with one suitcase and my laptop. Yeah. Nothing else. And now I have a house full of useless things that are just taking up space. Yeah. It's like, how did that happen? But yeah, so I'm not that attached to objects, but yeah, I have a few.
Yeah, but it sounds like some of them have a bit of an emotional connection.
Absolutely.
And a story there. So with your time here in Spain, have you encountered a tradition or a ritual that felt maybe creepier to you?
Creepier. Now, there's things I really like the sobremesa, Reyes coming up on the 5th. That, you know, there's like a whole, parade and all of that I never go to, of course. Yeah. I avoid that part of the city.
Can you explain a bit what that is, the Reyes, the King's Day?
Yeah, Reyes is, I believe, if I have it right, is 12th night, right? This is like for us, the three wise men. When the three wise men come and they bring gifts for all of the children. So here, because this is a very still Catholic country, you know, they have a big parade and the three wise men come and all of that, you know, it's like, wow, I remember, and they did this up until very recently. Do you remember they used to run the sheep through the streets?
Yeah.
You know? And I was living on the Calle Mayor at that time in a 6th floor walk-up. Talk about getting in good shape.
I think they still do it, actually. This last year, they did the Transhumancia.
Yeah, exactly, which I don't know the whole history of that, but somehow they take the sheep and they bring them from one spot to another spot and they run them through the very center of Madrid. And I just thought, I live in a country where you know, at that time, it was still we were already in the 21st century. They run sheep through the streets. I used to run downstairs whenever I heard anything happening on the street until I realized that there's just something happening all constantly, you know? There's some sort of demonstration or they're running the sheep through the street. Oh, the guy this is kind of creepy though if you think about it, now that I'm thinking about it. The guy with the whistle that sharpens your knives. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And he still comes around. I heard him on the street the other day, like probably a week ago. Yeah. And it's sort of a
exactly.
No?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in theory, folks, listeners, people bring down their knives that need sharpening, and this guy has a little machine on the back of his bike. Yep. He sharpens the knives.
It's normally like a moped thing that he has.
Yeah, exactly. Be careful because somebody told me not too long ago that a neighbor of theirs did that, and the guy wanted like 160 euros. No, something crazy. Yeah. Crazy, the poor woman. I think he was just taking advantage of her.
Trying to rip her off.
That's creepy.
Yeah, that is a little bit creepy. What did you think, for example, the first time that you saw the Semana Santa processions?
The first time, that was really a great experience.
Well, actually, before you tell me this, do you think maybe you can paint a little bit of a picture for our listeners? We've done one episode on this, actually.
Ah, really?
And the outfits that they wear. But if people haven't listened to it, can you explain what the Nazarenos look like?
They look like the Ku Klux Klan, to just be really direct with it.
And they have nothing to do with the Ku Klux Klan,
no,
just to be very clear.
They don't at all. But for me, I would like to investigate that history. Maybe you do it on the podcast. I missed that one somehow. Clearly the Nazarenos or, the Semana Santa people existed long before the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah. So it makes me think somebody in the Ku Klux Klan must have seen these hoods and these pointed hoods and these outfits and thought, oh, we don't want to show our faces because we're doing some nasty shit. Yeah. So let's steal this. Yeah. And, it has to be.
It's like a carbon copy of the outfits, yeah.
Totally.
Down to the red crosses on the white chest and everything. Yeah.
Completely. But here it is a religious celebration in Easter. And the very first year I was here, I came in September, so this would have been in March or April of the next year during Easter. I went with a very dear friend to Sevilla,
Okay.
where they have I'm not even going to say one of them, I'm going to say the most amazing celebration
Yeah, it's the one par excellence, yeah.
of Semana Santa. So
Yeah.
you have to imagine some of they carry around either Jesus or Mary on these sort of like platforms, and there's, I don't know, like 10, 20 guys, however many it takes to carry it around. They plan for this all year long. You've never seen so many people cry as a day when there's rain on the day of Semana Santa, because they lose their minds.
Yeah.
I mean, people are crying everywhere. But the year we went, there was only a tiny bit of rain.
Can you explain why people are crying when it's raining?
Well, they're crying, in my opinion, they're crying because they've worked all year long to be able to take this Jesus or Mary out of the church, march it around in the procession around the city.
Yeah.
And some of these processions, you have to imagine, they have I think El Gran Poder, which is one of the most important, has maybe 2,000 people all in these robes, in their Ku Klux Klan pointed hats.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And people sing, they sing from the balconies, they throw rose petals. One of the most amazing is El Silencio, I think it is.
Okay.
That's in silence.
Yeah.
They do it at night
Yeah.
around the cathedral in Seville, which is just one of the most beautiful in all of Spain. And I don't know how many are in that, 500, 600. I honestly don't know. And they're all in silence holding candles. Oh, my guys. You've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I've seen that before too. But I actually saw it here in San Lorenzo. And so there weren't 500 or 600 people. It was probably closer to 80 to 100. But it's still kind of a strange experience to see everyone holding the candles and in absolute silence marching around.
Exactly.
It gives you a feeling, I guess you could say.
It does give you a feeling.
Well, we were talking before about languages, and there was one question that I didn't ask you regarding language, which is, how do languages shape how you express yourself emotionally or when you're telling stories? Because we kind of talked about how your brain is wired differently in one language or another, but does that change how you personally would tell a story? Would you tell it one way in English and another in Spanish, or?
I mean, probably, but I think less than emotionally. I think it comes back to vocabulary. I just have certain ways of expressing myself. It is really true. I think, and I tell my students this, it's really bad to swear in another language because I don't think you understand the nuances of how to use them.
Yeah.
Right? And so my advice is, if you need to swear, go back to your native language. Yeah. Which we all know what we all use. It's like used over and over.
You know which kind of boundaries you're pushing.
Exactly. And it's the F word constantly because people always say, yeah, Mary, you're not really that inventive. Everything's the F word. I'm like, yeah, it kind of is, but it's so useful. It's a really good word. It works with a lot of different things. Yeah, I think more it's that the emotion. I do think, though, there are certain things, for example, te quiero doesn't mean the same thing to me as I love you.
Yeah.
Even though it means the same thing. But if someone says to me, I love you, it somehow hits me more deeply than te quiero. Because that in my brain is being translated to what they're saying to me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and also in Spanish you have te quiero and te amo, whereas in English we've just got I love you. And so I guess the meaning can change a little bit depending on the context or, It
seems like people use te quiero más than te amo.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they use it more in Latin America also. And also te amo for me is a little bit more intense. If you're saying that to someone, that's more than just also because in English, I think that we say I love you a lot. We say it a lot more than we would say in Spanish. Between friends, I don't know, when you meet someone and you've been friends for a couple of months, it wouldn't be that strange for that friend to say, oh, I just love you so much, Lori. Whereas in Spanish, it might be a little bit strange after 3 months hanging out with someone if they said, te quiero mucho.
Yeah.
I think maybe that might be a slight cultural difference.
Could be.
There are all sorts of different cultural differences that no one could ever write a book on them or, make a podcast or anything. I think it's just something you have to learn by trial and error.
Completely.
And it's a test by fire. But as we were talking about before, I know that there are lots of people that want to come here either as tourists or because they're considering moving here. So for foreign visitors to Spain or to Madrid, because that's where we're located geographically, Is there a location besides the parks that you talked about before, or a story that you would recommend that they visit and explore to really get a feeling for the country?
For the country, not just for Madrid.
Or either or.
I think definitely, if we're talking about Madrid, I think you have to go visit, one of the great museums. You have to go to the Prado, or my personal favorite is the Reina Sofia.
Why?
Oh, because I don't know why. I think it's more manageable. Prado is fabulous. It's really, really big.
Yeah.
Really big. And somehow I always get the feeling in the Reina Sofia that the space is a little more manageable. The Thyssen is also wonderful. Although for me, the art is kind of all over the place since it's a private person's collection.
Private collection, yeah.
But their temporary shows are magnificent. I would definitely visit the parks because they're just beautiful. And if you're traveling around Spain, I think I would do like a trip cathedral to cathedral, because sadly, I think what we have in Madrid, not to offend anyone listening, but our cathedral compared to the cathedral in Seville or in León or in Toledo, I don't know.
Or Burgos.
Or Burgos. I mean, some of these other cities that are considered more provincial cities, outside of Barcelona and Madrid, have some of the most beautiful cathedrals that you can imagine. I think you feel, Toledo also, I think, is a place that you really have to visit because this idea of, the Catholics, the Jews, the Muslims all sharing this place reasonably peacefully.
Yeah.
And for, I believe, 300 years. Yep. That's interesting. There's probably a lot we could learn from them.
Well, like we were saying, stories that can teach us things. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
For sure.
So, there's just so much. I think Spain has, 24 years, and I haven't been to every part of Spain. I haven't been to every city. You can't. Yeah. So, you could, but you would have to be pretty rich and not ever work, but which would be okay too. Yeah, right. I just think, I don't know. I think, I'll go back to quality of life. I think if you're, quality of life and the type of society that we have here, which sadly is under threat. But this idea of that we should all try to prosper. It isn't just about a few people being mega, mega, mega rich and the rest of us working for them. Yeah. That the idea, what kind of society do you want to live in? I want to live in a society where we care a little bit more about each other, where you have universal health coverage, where education is valued. And I know, a lot of these things are definitely under threat in Spain as well as in other places. Yeah. But I think there's still more of an understanding of, what's the vision here? What do we want? What do we want to have? And, I love the United States. I grew up there. But, boy, it's a pretty savage place right now. In the old days and, boy, right now. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're pretty happy with the move that you made here.
Oh, I am.
Well, Lori, I have to say it has been an absolute blast, both acting with you and having this chat now. I knew it was going to be fun.
It's been great.
Before we let you go, if anyone is interested, if they want to see your acting work, modeling work, is there anywhere online where they can find you?
I'm on Insta.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm on Insta. And I'm in a really fabulous theater group right now called Tango Teatro, which, of course, you can't see anywhere. Yeah. But we're doing some cool fun stuff. And, some really cool, interesting things. There. And no, when I get my first series or something, I'll come and find you.
Okay.
I'll let you know. Absolutely.
We'll be sure to add that into the show notes so that, yes,
please, definitely. We'll add a link.
That would be fantastic.
But thanks so much for inviting me. It's been a really fun day.
It has been an absolute blast. Thank you, Lori.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening in with us today. You can find a link to Lori's Instagram in the show notes and see her other work there. I'm also linking to the movie she mentioned about the girl from Gaza, the voice of Hind Rajab, and a Wikipedia article about the Church of San Nicolas in Madrid. It was built in the 1200s, and some say it was originally a mosque. It's definitely worth checking out. Maybe you'll feel that weird energy there. We talked about knife sharpeners and their creepy whistle music. There's also a link to a video so you can hear it for yourself. If you haven't heard Lori's performance yet, go listen. It's episode 9, María Pita, Swamp Breath. You can find it in this same feed. Remember to subscribe to Spanish Sundown and follow us on social media. You can search for @Spanish Sundown or tap the direct links in the episode description. That's a great way to be in touch with us, join the Spanish Sundown community, and see behind-the-scenes on-location footage from when I record the shows. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Until night falls and the voices speak again, thank you for listening to Spanish Sundown.